Benjamin Netanyahu claims that people who do not support Israeli war crimes and genocide hate Australia and all of Western society as Zionists engage in a full-court media press to advocate for global censorship.
And I say now to the Australian government, damn it, wake up. You don't need any more warnings. You've already received enough. They hate Israel. Let me tell you, they hate Jews. Let me tell you, they also hate Australia. They burn our flag, but they'll burn your flag, and they'll burn you. So understand that they're against our common civilization. So join us, Australia, in fighting the terrorists, in fighting the enemies of civilization, in fighting the barbarians. If we join forces together, I have no doubt we shall win.
These criminal Zionist scum insult our intelligence every day with such low-effort propaganda. Despite how cartoonish this propaganda is, Australia immediately folded and conceded to the demands of Netanyahu, showing their citizens who they truly work for. Australia has announced that they effectively put a ban on all pro-Palestinian protests or any speech critical of the genocidal state of Israel. It's very suspicious that they are using the Bombay Beach shooting as a way to crack down on free speech when they identify the shooter as a member of ISIS. You know, the same ISIS who very suspiciously also never attacks Israel? ISIS is the enemy of the pro-Palestinian movement who always suspiciously resurfaces whenever Israel needs a false flag attack to crack down on free speech. In fact, the person who stopped the shooter was a Muslim, completely ruining the Zionist psyop. But the truth doesn't even matter. The ruling class already made a decision to sell their population now to the state of Israel. The West has completely fallen to Zio-fascism.
What's poppin'? My friends, my family, welcome back to Nigga Primetime Live. You guys know I'm always in the lab cooking. And I've been focusing on building, I think we should fight against Zionists, building an anti-Zionist party, forming coalitions, because the West has completely fallen to this level of fascism. The West rejected freedom of speech. I have friends being arrested for calling out the crimes that are still going on in Gaza. Like there is still a slaughterhouse in Gaza right now. As people trying to move on and people on the progressive left is organizing with Zionists. This is what Zionists are currently working on right now, and the progressive left is helping them. Zoran Mamdani already pledged to fund the NYPD more to fight anti-Semitism. Do you guys know that the House progressives, they put an anti-Semitism bill up? They're like, you guys know, we don't trust Donald Trump to fight anti-Semitism, so we House progressives, we have our bill that's going to expand the police state in order to suppress the rights of Americans. And I will never forgive the people who validated this obvious psyop. Look, here's Netanyahu just demanding that Western governments sacrifice free speech on behalf of fighting anti-Semitism for the most privileged group in human history. Like, they made it clear that they're using the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which means essentially any criticism of Israel's existence, which is valid. If he was to claim that people in AIPAC, if he was to say that Randy Fine has dual loyalties, that would be considered like an anti-Semitic act, even though it's obviously true. People like Ben Shapiro don't give a damn about the average American. But this is what the West has fallen to. Israel, we have Netanyahu demands that Western governments act to battle anti-Semitism, heed our warnings. And many of them are. You have Australia completely fallen. The UK has completely fallen. And if you think that they don't want to implement this in the United States, you are out of your goddamn mind. Kamala Harris, like the front runner on the Democrats, her AIPAC handler husband, and we're going to cover that here very soon, was essentially making a pitch to adopt the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism and the crackdown on free speech, saying that we're not doing enough. Do you guys know that Doug Emhoff, once again, I like to call him Kamala's AIPAC husband. I don't be like, don't you know that's anti-Semitism? Making fun of Jews is not anti-Semitism. Saying something that upset the Jews is not anti-Semitism. So I understand why you'd be upset at me calling him that nickname, but that's not anti-Semitic. He's a little AIPAC boy. That's what I call them. I call all of them, and they all little AIPACs. Because do you guys know what AIPAC is? AIPAC is a collection of over 4 million Jewish supremacists who don't donate to mutual aid. They don't donate to healthcare. They don't care about the American people. They donate to corrupt our politics. But like I was saying, Doug Emhoff, you guys know that his number one priority as second gentleman under Joe Biden was to fight the quote-unquote scourge of anti-Semitism. And under his policy guidelines that the Biden administration laid out, they made it illegal to teach about Palestinian history. That's how deranged these people are. Here's Australia. Here's the Prime Minister confirming the government will implement nationwide anti-Semitism hate speech laws following the Australian shooting terrorist attack. I don't even humor this. Do you guys see how terrifying this is becoming? And the fact that people will even humor this when they're arresting people, and over 30 people per day is being arrested. They're arresting doctors for criticizing their government. Why would anyone legitimize this? The left, who've been calling out the corrupt influence of the state of Israel and the crimes they're committing against the Palestinians, they have gone out of their way at every point, at every step in the way, to protect Jewish feelings, way more than I would. Way more than I would. But it's fair. I think that's a legitimate political strategy to try to avoid accusation. But they do everything they can to protect Jewish feelings, and they still get labeled an anti-Semite. They call their own an anti-Semite. What's the name of that cartoon? I mean, not cartoon, but that kid. I'm blanking on her name. She made content video for kids. They named her like one of the most anti-Semitic people in the world. I'm blanking on her name. But they didn't essentially label anyone. Tucker Carlson said he likes Israel. I don't know what he says now, but I remember he said once he condemned Hamas. He said he likes Israel. Yeah, Miss Rachel. Yeah, sorry, I was blanking on her name. Yeah, thank you guys. I never heard Tucker Carlson and a lot of the people they label anti-Semitic. They're not even like hardcore Hamas supporters like I am. That would annoy the shit out of me. I don't get my credit. But the reason why they freaking out like this, look at this. Look at this coordinated effort by comrades on the left like me who've been talking about this issue forever. People on the right who just now discovered how evil Israel is, but that's okay. We're working together and we can continue to make this number even worse for Israel. Only 20% of Americans said they support financial support for Israel. 62% opposed. 18%, I'm sure those are people who are not paying attention to politics. It's okay. Live your best life, boo-boo. It's all good. But, bro, this number, as someone who's been following this issue forever, before October 7th, to see it flip this fast. I knew that we had a generational divide, but for it to flip this fast, that's why the Zionists are in complete panic mode right now. And you had Netanyahu, who was calling for like international, global crackdown on any criticism of Israel, including having armed guards. Like, how horrible of an idea does this sound? Listen to this.
Imagine if you had on that beach, on that Hanukkah gathering, if you had several armed people, several armed guards, 10, 15, even 5, it would be over. That's what we've seen time and again in Israel, time and again. And that saves the day. And I think that's required right now. The world has changed. Recognize the change.
So he said that's what we do in Israel. So this is Benjamin Netanyahu preaching and advocating for the Israeli model for Western governments to follow all around the world, to have Zionist trained and Zionist loyal armed guards of the state. They're using the Bondi shooting as a way to build sympathy for it. But can you imagine how horrific this vision of society actually sounds? Armed Zionist security guards everywhere. And you know they want to direct it at pro-Palestinian protesters. Once again, imagine being a police officer, not doing shit to protect criminals. This is what you're doing with your time. You spend your time around, have a conscience, the best of your society. Look at this.
Free Palestine! Death to the IDF! Death to the IDF! Israel! Free Palestine!
How is that not treasonous behavior? Look, simply for chanting for Palestine, police detain pro-Palestinian supporters. This is in Amsterdam. So you guys see how Europe has completely fallen for Zio-fascism, where they're just arresting people in the street. And here is this is an Israeli. Oh, this is the official account of the embassy in London for the state of Israel. This is Zionists bragging that they stole your country from you. So as a lot of these right-wing white boys in the UK, like, oh my God, we want our country back. That went Bob Dylan. He got a banger. Well, we want our country back. The immigrants, like, bro, the Zionists Ben took your country. What are you talking about? And I'm gonna put this back on the screen here. The white people are like, I want our country back. The immigrants took our country. Meanwhile, you're ran by Jewish supremacists. The Embassy of Israel in the United Kingdom welcomes the joint announcement by the Metropolitan Police and Greater Manchester Police Forces that they will arrest people promoting the phrase globalize the intifada. So here are Zionists bragging that they stole your free speech rights in the UK, in the West. But they want to fearmonger over authoritarianism in China, in Russia, in Iran. Zoran Mamdani, he wants you to know that Nicolas Maduro is a tyrant who engages in political repression. That's what all the liberals on CNN and MSNBC who tactically supporting Donald Trump's regime change operation in Venezuela. We're going to get to that here very soon. They're saying, don't you know that we gotta seize the oil? I support Donald Trump seizing the oil because don't you know that Maduro is an evil tyrant who suppresses his political foes? Meanwhile, this is the UK and the West is directly arresting people who stand up against the true owners of Western governments, the Jewish supremacists in our government, the Christian Zionists, the prime ministers and head of government, people like Keir Starmer, who has family in Israel. Like Keir Starmer admits that he had family in Israel. Meanwhile, he governs Israel first and plunging his country into fascism in order to protect his family's genocidal state. That's where their loyalty lies. But if I was in the UK, I would get arrested right now for saying that because that would violate the IHRA definitions of anti-Semitism because they say, how dare you say you have dual loyalty? How dare you have dual loyalty to a country? How dare you say we have that when we are arresting people for criticizing the state of Israel? Well, here she is being arrested again. We covered her before, Dr. Rame Aldewan. She been arrested for.
Rame, just come down here. I'll tell you the rest of preaching about conditions.
Wait, what condition? What
Later on, of course, we'll detail how you do this. Tell you the reasons why. Got arrested on the 4th of December, didn't you?
Yeah.
For Section 18.
And I see shit lives. They see stuff like, what are we, North Korea? No, this is the West. This is happening in the West. Police storming the houses of medical professionals, the working class in the UK in general, and arresting them for social media posts. Yeah, the Zionists, under what the boomers allowed, what Gen X allowed in the West, is for the Zionists to take over. As white America engaged in the culture war, as they'll find Black Lives Matter, as they'll find the gay agenda, they lost their country to the Zionists. That's how I like to say it, at least, because that's how we drive these numbers down. The people who oppose Israel, because I believe it's one entirety of the ruling class, the Zionist ruling class, completely did a coup right under the noses of the boomers, which is wild, man. But people are waking up. And this is the battle that we have for a lifetime. I have so many people on the right who follow me on X, like big accounts, who I know, like whenever I'm ranting against capitalism, whenever I'm preaching about socialism, communism, I know they hate it. But they follow and they like all my tweets about Israel, though. Like, people are serious about holding this government accountable. Here's another doctor. The police in London has arrested Dr. Ellen Cressels for 2 X posts. So she made 2 posts on X. And now she's being arrested. Because you have these police officers who are acting on behalf of the Israeli lobby.
Why am I arrested for? So I recommend that you be arrested for stirring up racial hatred.
Stirring up racial hatred.
On social media?
The 2 incidents on social media on the 8th and 27th of August this year.
In the 8th and the 27th of August.
So posts she made a few months ago, they tracked her down after a post a few months ago and have the police officers who does not work for the people of the UK. These people are agents of Jewish supremacy, foot soldiers of fascism. When we say there's no such thing as a good cop, these people don't decline these orders coming from the imperial regime. So they want you to believe that Nicolas Maduro is a tyrant. Meanwhile, here is the West arresting people for affirming international law that Palestinians have the right to armed resistance.
Did you ask me just to come to the police station for an interview? So why did you have to come to my house? We're not investigating this as we just been asked to conduct this arrest inquiry, which is why we only have limited details about what's happened. Are you sure? We'll get you. Where's your phone?
How is that not terrifying? I think like the only thing she did was reaffirm Palestinians' right to armed resistance. She agreed with the United Nations that Israel's committing a genocide. Damn, I thought I had it saved. Damn, hold up. I thought I was looking for here's my friend Dr. Rame Aldewan. Oh shit, I'm sorry guys. I thought I had her post here, but I guess I don't. But all these people are saying is that the government of the UK is ran by Jewish supremacists and they're funding a genocide. That's what Rame Aldewan is saying. And then they accuse her of promoting Jewish supremacy conspiracy theories. So the Jewish supremacist government then have her arrested, proving her point. Proving her point that the government ran. Isn't that how crazy is that? But we live in a post-truth society. Wonder if there's any other updates she has on here. I need to be careful because yeah, we probably wish more updates on there. And as they were doing this, the UK government in Germany, they're sending weapons to Israel, and they're quoting the ceasefire. They say, "Oh well, there's a ceasefire in place, and because of the ceasefire, we're going to continue sending weapons to the state of Israel." Despite that, they're still engaging in mass slaughter of Palestinians in Gaza as we speak. I already did a segment on this the other day covering how they're actively annexing the West Bank. What if I actually got here's what I covered the other day. Look, Germany condemns Israel plan to build over 750 housing units. So a full-blown invasion of Palestine that you guys are still sending weapons and enabling. And then people in your own country call that out. They call Keir Starmer out and the government in the UK for their criminal behavior. So then they send the Zio-fascist police officers to intimidate them and arrest them for exposing their internationally criminal behavior. Like, this is bleak. You guys think they don't want this in the West? They definitely want to implement this in the West. You have, look at this, babies starving in Gaza, baby freezing to death. We reach a point, here's my friend Asal. We reach a point of Israel's genocide where Doctors Without Borders can report a 29-day-old Palestinian baby freezing to death, and it's not even news. And that's why Americans are turning against the state of Israel. And that's why people in the UK are risking there are people on hunger strike, people being mass arrested. And you think they don't want to implement that in the United States? You think do you think the Zionists in the West, especially seeing these polls that we've been covering, do you think we only going to implement that a little bit in Europe? In Eastern Europe, in the UK, and Germany, and France. No, you think they wouldn't implement that in the United States in the quickness? That's what they push it for here. So this is what I wanted to get to. This is Doug Imhoff.
October 7th, 2023.
And you guys see, this is the nonstop propaganda that we are hit with after this very suspicious Mossad. And my friend Nico House, he covered it. The false flag, the very suspicious shooting with a lone gunman of ISIS, because political militias and operations, they're known for sending lone gunmen. This ISIS gunman who doesn't attack Israel, and you think Israel wouldn't attack Jews? They wouldn't engage in the false flag like this in order to implement this global anti-Semitic crackdown, which they already have been extremely successful in tricking populists and accepting. And now here's MSNBC, and here's them doing their job to help legitimize this. And they're going to have Kamala Harris's AIPAC handler husband come on and essentially make the pitch on why the United States, we should have the same kind of program that the UK has, that Australia has. This is the leading candidate for president for Democrats. This is the Democratic Party that puts this, by the way.
Jewish communities worldwide amid a global rise in anti-Semitism. Australia has been rocked by an increase in anti-Semitic incidents since the October 7th, 2023 Hamas attacks on Israel. All of this comes amid a dramatic rise in anti-Semitic incidents here in the United States as well. The Anti-Defamation League reported that more than 9,000 incidents happened in 2024.
Listen to this goy slop. Just quoting the Anti-Defamation League fascist uncritically. We have done breakdowns. Many people expose how all these incidents are people, they taking pro-Palestinian protests and they are listing that as anti-Semitic incidents. They're taking other Jewish supremacists, people who support children being burned alive, people who support genocide. They will report, oh my God, this pro-Palestinian protest made me feel uncomfortable. Then they will mark that as an anti-Semitic incident. They had pro-Palestinian flags that was mentioned as an anti-Semitic incident. So if we on the left are seeing that they are making up these bullshit numbers using bullshit methods that are not true, not legitimate, why would anyone on the left support or back up the claim that the anti-Semitism crisis is real? If the anti-Semitism crisis was real, why would they have to make up this bullshit? Let's continue.
It's the highest number on record since the ADL began tracking these incidents in 1979. Joining us now is former Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff, the leading voice in the Biden administration's efforts to fight anti-Semitism. Thank you, Mr. Second Gentleman.
Yeah, he led the effort. This is Kamala Harris's AIPAC handler husband. This is why they chose to elevate her. Do you understand how the D state operate? Do you understand how the ruling class operate? You see it with Erica Kirk. These people don't marry for love. They marry for power. So what's one of the best things you can do to signal to the ruling class that you are loyal? People in the CIA used to talk about this. If you're in the CIA, you marry someone else who's in the CIA. People in the FBI, they marry other people in the FBI, or people who are branch adjacent. They'll marry someone in the military, CIA, military people commingle. If you know how to climb in career, because it sends a message like, bro, if you show your loyalty to the establishment in blood, if you're willing to give a marriage oath to the establishment, that is a sign that you put your family online. You are loyal to the cause. So that's how little I look at the professional managerial class and their love. It's not real. Like, to me, this might as well be an arranged marriage. So when Kamala marries this AIPAC stooge, this Zionist stooge, that's her sending a message that she's willing to put her blood on the line, that she's willing to tie her family with Israel. That's why they put a rocket ship on her. So let's listen to what he had to say.
For joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Great to see you all.
I want to start out with a question that I hope can sort of set the stage for this conversation here about the debate that we're seeing play out in real time about the rise in anti-Semitism and why we're seeing that happening. Needless to say, there's been a lot of finger pointing here. But Yair Rosenberg argued in The Atlantic this week that it's actually not a partisan problem, but a demographic problem. He concluded, based on recent polling, extensive data, that the phenomenon should be framed as a generational one.
Look, so MSNBC is saying the entirety of Gen Z is Hamas. The entire generation. Yeah, and they were right there. It's not really about partisanship when it comes to our generation. You have people on the right who was calling out Israel killing Americans, calling out the anti-Semitism hoax. And you have young people on the left who've been calling this out for years. It's only one generation. It's only the boomers who are still brainwashed just based on numbers on this issue. Let's continue this a little more. I have a guest. I have my friend Chris Halele, who will be joining us here very soon. I will introduce you here very soon, brother. I'll play this just one more part of this clip here.
What do you think is the theory of the case here about why we are seeing a rise in anti-Semitism right now?
Well, Jackie, it's not a rise, it's a crisis in anti-Semitism.
Come on, man.
This had been on the rise before October 7th. When I got to the administration, we had already started working on this. Our national strategy to counter anti-Semitism actually came out before October 7th. So we already knew it was a problem. And after
under the Biden administration, you have the second gentleman here who made his number one priority. You know, the second wife or all of them people, they have like one thing they focus on. Michelle Obama wanted to make people healthy. Everyone has the thing they wanted to do, right? His thing was to crack down on the freedom of speech of Americans. That's what he used his clout as second gentleman to advocate for. And you guys know that he made it illegal to teach about Palestinian history. That was part of his contribution. He made it illegal to bring up the Nakba, to bring up Israeli war crimes against Palestinians because they were labeled as anti-Semitic, denying the sovereign right of Jewish people to seek self-determination. That is what Doug Emhoff did, and he admits here he did it before October 7th. Even before the genocide, they had plans to roll back your free speech rights. And they knew that when they had Biden in the White House, with the one of the most diehard loyal Zionists, with their loyal vice president, Kamala Harris, who has an AIPAC handler husband, they knew that now was the time to pull the trigger on the final solution for Gaza and the West Bank when they have a loyal Democrat Party administration, and now we have the Republicans who can finish them, get them across the finish line. I'll put one more clip and I'll introduce my guest, and we're gonna talk about this nonsense here. I'll play one more clip before I bring my guest in.
October 7th clearly became a crisis. As it relates to younger people, they are on social media. There's not enough education, if any education, about the Holocaust, what anti-Semitism is, what even Jews are, who are we?
Come on,
and
man.
What is replacing that is fringe conspiracy theories, some of the oldest tropes, all packaged as, oh, I just have a question, or isn't this interesting? And then they're becoming almost radicalized on this topic before they're being educated properly on what it is. And
these goddamn kids and quoting international law. Before I continue this, because we will continue this, I want to bring my guests in. We have an amazing scholar from DDG, analyst, chairman, one of the founders of ACP, at least one of the top people at ACP, I should say. My friend Chris Alali. Hopefully I get it right this time. Thank you for joining us on RBN once again, my friend. I'm glad you're able to join us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be with you as always.
Yeah, I was covering in my intro monologue how they are arresting doctors in the UK, how like the UK leads the world in the amount of people are arrested for social media posts. It's over 33 per day. Like the West has completely fallen to Zio-fascism, and the West is panicking in response to the American people waking up to the Zionist scourge in the West. So I want to get your take on this quote unquote rise of anti-Semitism, and on RBN, feel free to push back on me if you want, but I take the position that we shouldn't legitimize this nonsense. It's been used to crack down on freedom of speech. But what are your thoughts on this nonstop coverage of anti-Semitism? Do you think it's real? Do you think it's an issue that we should check in as well? Before I continue the clip, I want to get your thoughts on this, Chris. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you again for having me. No, I think that this is artificial. I think it's very much inflated. I think that actually Zionism has created an anti-Semitism problem where there was really none before. And of course, anti-Semitism has always been with us, just like any other prejudice or chauvinism that's existed. The problem is that Zionism itself, through its genocidal and absolutely barbaric apartheid system, has made people hate the Zionist entity so much. And because they conflate Zionism and Judaism, then anything that's labeled anti-Zionism is seen as anti-Semitic. Even though there are plenty of Jews, you and I both know them, we work alongside them, we struggle alongside them, we protest and rally with them, that are absolutely anti-Zionist. Not only secular ones, also religious ones, like Rabbi David Weiss and all of the Neturei Karta people and everybody like that. But what we have today is an anti-Semitism industry, much like the Holocaust industry that Norman Finkelstein wrote about, and I think aptly understood. We have an entire industry now. And this is coming from people who are like against DEI and the wokeists, and they're against all of this kind of stuff. And here they are pushing down our throats that anti-Semitism is everywhere, that Jew haters are lurking in every corner, And therefore, we need to curb speech. We need to increase surveillance. We basically need to be more authoritarian and totalitarian than any state that they label as such, right? When we know that they label the states that we, of course, defend in those terms, they have become that. It's all projection. It's all projection because they are the ones using various legal and political methods to crack down on free speech, free expression, free assembly, and even just basic journalistic values. And it's really, really scary, I think. And what's happening in the UK is a canary in the coal mine, to use canary. Of course, we know canary, all that's, related with this, to use that to understand that what British citizens are facing now, or just people in the UK in general, is an extremely repressive state in which they do not have legal recourse to defend themselves as easily as in the United States, because, as you know, United Kingdom is a common law system, but doesn't have a constitution, not a written one, at least, right? So all of that to say that our civil liberties are at stake here. And my good friend, and I'm sure, you follow him closely, George Galloway, is living in exile now.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's crazy. 7-time member of parliament living in exile because he spoke the truth and because he's friends with the wrong people, supposedly. But
AOC was like, I want socialism like the UK.
I know.
That's the kind of shit that they say. And they condemn Venezuela and Cuba while leaving the fascism of the UK and Europe completely alone. But please continue, Chris.
No, I think that what we are experiencing now is we are experiencing a terminal crisis where, because of the fact that these states are beholden to the Zionist entity, they're willing to go after their own people. They're willing to crack down on their own people to serve that entity's interests, right? And when you think about that, there's this proverbial, and I want to get your thoughts on this. There's the proverbial sort of pull and tug, sort of what's going on? Like, if this is trying to think about who's actually in charge here. Does the Zionist entity have more power over the US? Does the US have more power over the Zionist entity? Is there some sort of symbiotic relationship? What are your thoughts on this? Because I've been seeing people shifting and changing, especially since October 7th, as to who actually runs the show. If anybody runs the show, who knows what's going on up there? But what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. It's funny because I like to have these kind of intellectual conversations, like what comes first, chicken on the egg? Is Israel in charge? Is Benjamin Netanyahu the real president, or is he just a puppet of the United States? And I always tell my friends in our audience that use whatever argument you think work on your target audience. I find with the right wingers, like if I'm talking to like a more right wing conservative American, I'm like, yeah, you got them right. Israel hijacked our government. That's how you win them over. They're like, no, you fucking Netanyahu, he doesn't run this. That's a good argument to use on them. I believe that Israel is a colonial outpost of the United States in the West, and they serve one identical interest. It's one united empire. It's the NATO, Zionist, Atlantic, ruling class dictatorship that we're part of. Like Keir Starmer, he got family in that's from Israel. The BlackRock prime minister in Germany, he's a diehard Zionist. Like Zionism has completely infested the West because generations of the ruling class. I mean, this goes back to even Napoleon back in his day. They dreamed of conquering the Middle East. How do you tame the Middle East? And you have to understand that these members of the ruling class, they don't have unique thoughts. Like these are ambitions that are passed down generation after generation, and they have the same ambitions of the conquerors of the past, where they've seen Russia as the enemy. That's what have extreme Russophobia. And they always want to have a foothold in the Middle East. And if they, God forbid, if they can have a foothold in Southeast Asia and possibly conquer China, that would be amazing. And they have colonial outposts. They have Taiwan that they use as a way to create a colonial issue against China, and they're using Israel as a way to colonize the Middle East, which have been extremely successful because they killed a lot of liberation fighters over the last few decades, and they installed Muslim Zionists. These are the sellouts that you see in charge now. They are the people who are opportunistic, but they survived. They saw how Zionist was infesting the Middle East. They wanted power. They saw the radical fighters get assassinated, and they're like, man, fuck that. I'm gonna just sell out the people. I'm gonna become a Jewish supremacist myself. And that's the rise of Muslim Zionism in the Middle East, who help enable Israel. So it's one big system. It's not about who owns who. It's not like Israel owns the United States. It's not the United States own Israel. But to answer your question, I say, fuck, don't stop being. We don't have to be fucking nerds about this, guys. We have fucking fascism at our doorstep. Use whatever argument work on your target audience. And I think with many Americans saying that Netanyahu controls our government, our Congress, that he controls Donald Trump, I think that's an effective argument. But what's your thoughts?
No, I agree with you. And I also agree that it's sort of a secondary aspect of this entire thing, where the primary thing that we should be focused on is that, as you said, and you put it very eloquently, it's part of the same system. It's part of the same, if you want to put it really, imperialist, colonialist, racist system. And what it's doing is it is once again trying to take land with a sort of religious, political dimension to cover it up, and below it, really trying to extend U.S. power and dominance, NATO power and dominance, and their allied, countries like South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, which of course is not a separate country, but the United States treats it basically de facto as such. And Israel, also now in Latin America, like we have to talk about
that's our next segment.
When you think about that, right? So I'm just thinking to myself, like, okay, there's a lot of stuff that's wrapped up into this. And ultimately, if you see it as a cohesive whole, then you can then when you strike at Israel, you're also striking at the US, you're also striking at the European Union, at the Five Eyes, at NATO. You're striking at the heart of imperialism and colonialism in our time. And that's the key. Once you understand that that they both are part of the same whole, then you can aptly make the correct critique, in terms of political economy as to what comes next, what should be destroyed and what should be built. And I agree with you that if, depending on the crowd, of course, speak to the crowd, because when I'm with, for example, my friends who are against the vaccines and we're like COVID skeptics and everything like that, what do I say? Who helped with Operation Warp Speed? The Israelis. Yeah. And they're like, what? I'm like, I got evidence. I got a lot of evidence for you all. And then afterwards, they're like, fuck those people. And so, you can help to open people's minds so that they understand that, wow, all these like powerful interests are together, right? And that's very powerful, I think.
Very well said. That's why it's always great to have you on, man. It's always great to bounce these ideas off your head. If you're on the RBN YouTube stream, make sure you check out our other platforms. I'm also streaming on Twitch, on X. I'm going to end the RBN stream, and make sure you check out my personal channel and our other streams as well. I'm going to go back to this segment with Doug Emhoff, but we're also going to cover the oil tankers in Venezuela and how CNN and MSNBC, and I've been doing a lot of, I've been watching these neocons of corporate media like a hawk. Even the quote-unquote resist media is legitimizing Donald Trump's legal argument on why he can seize the oil tanker. So we're going to cover that next. That'll be our next segment. We're going to dive deep into Venezuela, the global response to it. Essentially, Trump's actions in Venezuela is 100% illegal. But, of course, liberal corporate media is pretending like he has some sort of legitimate argument. He does not. We'll cover that here next. Here's Doug Emhoff, who wants to turn the United States into Germany, into the UK, into Australia. And he's going to say the quiet part out loud here very soon, because it's obvious he's building up to the argument. Oh, my God, these young people, their mind being rotted with international law. Their mind is being rotted with empathy. And it is such a disaster. So I'm going to let it play a little bit. I'm going to go back a bit. I'll let it play. And then Chris, if you want to chime in, feel free. There's going to be a lot to say here.
This had been on the rise before October 7th. When I got to the administration, we had already started working on this. Our national strategy to counter anti-Semitism actually came out before October 7th. So we already knew it was a problem. And after October 7th, clearly became a crisis. As it relates to younger people,
So if I told you guys that there was a secret cabal of Jewish supremacists in our government that was scheming on how to censor Americans, they were like, "Man, you're an anti-Semite." That's literally Doug Emhoff. That's what he did in the Biden administration. He's on corporate national TV admitting that they were scheming behind the scenes and implementing anti-free speech laws on Americans, which once again, for example, I don't know if you know this, Chris, but they banned teaching about the Nakba, teaching Palestinian history.
Yes.
Doug Emhoff, that was part of their, like, no one on the left and no liberals was covering. It's like you guys realize that you guys are voting for a fascist? That Kamala and her husband are literally fascists who ban and want to ban Palestinian history. But before I continue, do you have anything you want to add, Chris, before I move on?
You know, it's scary just like looking at him and hearing him. It's just scary at the cold, calculated way that they're going about this. It's surgical. It's precise. It's not like random. These people have planned this out. And if you say things like that, if you, for example, say that there is a concerted effort backed by dark money and, you know, I would say very shady interests, and you say that in relation to this, you're anti-Semitic, you're a Nazi, you're a fascist, you're this, you're that. But it's just the truth. Where does this stuff come from? Like, where did Doug Emhoff get these ideas? Who's Doug Emhoff working for? Who's providing the funding to go after that? When you start asking those questions, people are gonna, you know, they're gonna take you down. That you're asking questions that somehow allude to some like deep, dark cabal. Well, oftentimes it is a cabal. It's just not a cabal. It's just a group of wealthy, powerful individuals who are making decisions that affect millions, if not billions of lives. And that's the reality. That's the reality of the system. So I think that we have to look at in that face right there staring at us, and we have to see behind it an entire set of relations and a system that connects those relations that is able to carry out something like what he's talking about here, which I think is ultimately very scary. And I know you agree.
Yeah. And liberal Zionism is very sneaky. But it's cringe when I see people fall for this because he's going to do the textbook Bernie Sanders style liberal Zionist trick where he's like, hey guys, it's okay to criticize the Netanyahu government. I'm not saying it's wrong to do that. But you guys see how he's implying that the rise of anti-Semitism would come from and is born in criticism of the Israeli government and the Jewish community support of it. And he's tying that to anti-Semitism. So what he's doing is inherently propaganda. And then he ties like, well, it's okay if you criticize the Netanyahu government, but if you start calling for the abolition of Israel, that's where you cross the line. Like, what do you mean? I'll let it play because you guys, he's going to use that liberal Zionist trick. I'll let it continue.
And after October 7th, clearly became a crisis. As it relates to younger people, they are on social media. There's not enough education, if any education, about the Holocaust, what anti-Semitism is, what even Jews are, who are we? And what is replacing that is fringe conspiracy theories, some of the oldest tropes, all packaged as, oh, I just have a question, or isn't this interesting?
And asking questions is anti-Semitic now.
Anti-Semitic. Why are you asking questions? Why are we streaming?
I'm sorry. I sound like continue. This is a joke. I'm sorry.
Before they're being educated properly on what it is, and this is not a partisan. This is nonpartisan. This is affecting people, no matter what their political leanings are.
Mr. Emhoff, you and I have talked about anti-Semitism and the rise and the crisis for years.
This is bug dancing Negro.
House, you know, I talked to you in London. We talked about.
You guys see now what MSNBC? What they have two gay black men to sell Zionism.
You gotta check this.
Yeah, Chris, this is neoliberalism in a nutshell. I hate this show with every single ounce and fiber and because I watch these shows, I be suffering for you guys to find clips to play. Bro, this show is led by two gay black neoliberals that love Zionism. This is why, this is DEI in a nutshell. So here are two black gay men to explain to you why we need to crack down on free speech to stand up for anti-Semitism. We got to fight for Jewish feelings, guys. But Chris, feel free. I'm having fun. Anything you want to add?
No, I'm just saying, like, they are MSNBC and like all these networks are notorious for tokenizing, especially Black gay men, Black women, and throwing them out. And of course, I mean, we of course know, Reverend Al Sharpton, they throw him out there as well. And basically what these people do is they do the shtick and they help to support and justify all of the things that their ancestors and many of their, of their fellow people were fighting against and giving their blood, sweat, and tears for. And it's just horrible. It's horrible to see. And I mean, they are literally shilling for a genocide. Like we're talking about anti-Semitism in the midst of a friggin' genocide. Like, it's unbelievable. It's like the Germans saying, excuse me, there's anti-German sentiment in the United States and they're calling us like sauerkraut and things like that and a bunch of krauts. And we take umbrage with that. Well, you know what? Maybe you should stop committing a genocide and killing all the people in Europe.
Exactly. Very well said, Chris. And this is why I despise liberalism in a nutshell. Because you got to see the Western feminist. That's who she is, the lady on top. She's the feminist lady. They had the white feminists. Then they had the 2 gay Black dudes to preach liberal Zionism to you. Why we need to crack down on free speech. And as you said, Chris, this is a great point you made. Fam, Israel violated the ceasefire hundreds of times. And they are currently annexing the West Bank. They just approved more land annexation through the Knesset today. Like going through the legislation. So as Israel's murdering Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, liberals are talking about how we need to crack down on anti-Semitism. You guys don't think that's morally that's disgusting? That's traitorous. And MSNBC, the corporate media, they're smart enough to know they can trick liberal wine moms, and they have 2 gay Black dudes who be flirting with each other all the time on camera. Like like this show is very cringe to where they flirt with each other on camera. The feminist chick here to back up Zionist propaganda. They heard to do anti-free speech propaganda. But I'll continue. But Chris, feel free to chime in anytime you want.
For years, when I was covering the White House, I talked to you about it in London. We talked about it here in the States. We talked about how it was impacting schools and colleges and what that looked like. We talked about, the other side of that, where people were pitting Muslim Americans and Jewish Americans against each other. And one of the things that
the Zionists are doing that.
A lot of people.
You guys see how he is muddying the water. Like, there are some people on Israel that say death to Arabs because they do that. But people on the left are just as bad. Do you guys see how liberalism help enable and justify fascism? Yeah, the people on the left are just as bad as the fascists.
Come on.
I'm sorry. I keep interrupting this. I'll let it play a little bit more.
Worried about. I'm curious what you think. Is we don't seem to have leaders in this country who are trying to lower the temperature, who are trying to educate in the way that you're talking about. So where does that leave us as a country? Because you guys were working on this over and over and over again. You had lots of Jewish Americans. You talked to students. That's not happening with this White House, with this administration. So
what are you talking about?
As a country, if the leaders of the country don't seem to be doing this in a good faith effort anymore.
Yeah, thanks, Gene. It's good to see you again. We did have this conversation in London. We met with Jewish groups there who were afraid, just like Jews around the world are afraid, especially after the horrific.
So once again, if you was to say that Jewish groups was meeting in secret with the United States government, which he just confirmed, they will call you anti-Semite.
Absolutely. Whoa. It's like the elders of the protocols of Zion. Whoa, what are you pushing, Nick? What are you pushing? And you're like, no, it's a fact. They all met in the back room. Whoa. How do you know they weren't praying in the back room? How do you know what they were doing? You see, it's just insane talk. And it's a form of gaslighting, really.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like, I honestly think that there is like a psychological warfare aspect to all of this.
Very well said. Let's continue. This is, sorry, I'm having way more fun with this segment than I thought I would. Like, it's so absurd. Let's continue.
Attack in Australia. Look, leaders need to lead, period. This issue just cries out for saying and doing the right thing. I tweeted after Australia that I'm so sick and tired of lip service from so-called leaders who will, offer.
What are you advocating for?
Something like this, and then
you guys say, here it is. This is what I'm talking about. What are you advocating for? You're like, I'm tired of leaders just saying lip service. So Australia is already implementing xenofascism. They already cracking down on pro-Palestinian protests. They arrested pro-Palestinian action people, and it still happened. So what are you implying? This is why I said that Doug Emhoff is advocating for mass censorship, because he said he's tired of leaders just doing lip service. What are you implying, sir? Say it with your chest. He's going to imply a little bit later. You guys see they dancing around it, what they really want to say? Come on, man. But I'll continue. But feel free to chime in anytime, Chris, if you have any thoughts.
We never hear from them again. And then the silence is shocking of certain leaders who need to have a strong voice, who need to be saying the things that need to be said. And it's not just words at this point, it's action. Our national strategy called for increased money for security. It called for tackling the scourge of misinformation and disinformation.
What does that mean?
Online, which includes Section 230 reform, which
there it is. There it is, Chris.
There it is. There it is. And it's not only, I keep saying this to everybody so that they understand, it's not only about Israel, Zionism, the Palestinians. It is about everybody.
Yes,
it is about all speech. So, for example, they're going to say, I'm a Russian propagandist. They're going to say somebody else is a Chinese propagandist. They're going to say the other one's an Iranian propagandist. And they're going to try to use any mechanism that they have, and especially stuff that they want to ram down Congress's throat, so that way they can pass it. They want to slowly erode, and I don't even think slowly anymore. I think they want to quickly erode our civil liberties to be able to create more of the authoritarian conditions by which they can continue to enact their vision of the future, which is still, by the way, Pax Americana, U.S. hegemony. That's the way it is. Those people have not gone away. The specter of Fukuyama and Huntington and so many others, but more importantly, the specter of the neocons, John Bolton, Dick Cheney, Paul Wolfowitz, all of these guys, Elliot Abrams, all of these guys are still in some way or other have an impact on what's happening in Washington. And that's the big fear I have, is that a lot of people don't understand that much of this language will not stop with Palestine and Israel. It will go on. It'll talk about the Donbass, it'll talk about Taiwan and Xinjiang and Xinjiang and all of these things. It'll talk about Nicaragua, Cuba, Venezuela. And so, and it'll talk about, of course, the Sahel states, which are undergoing massive terrorism, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, not to mention Central African Republic and so many others. So I think that we need to really understand that this is not only about anti-Semitism. It's not only about Jews. This is about state power being used to crush dissent.
Very well. That's exactly what you had. This is why Black radicals have been on the side of the Palestinian movement for years now. I've been tweeting about Israel years before October 7th. We was on the streets marching, protesting after what happened to George Floyd. We saw the police training with Israel. We were like, hey, yo, what was that? You guys see the police training with the IDF? We immediately saw the connection. And that's why our Palestinian brothers in Gaza made a George Floyd mural. They was showing solidarity with it. They showed solidarity with victims of police violence. Sinwar had a famous speech he gave. He's talking about this all the time, how their struggle was connected with the struggle that Black Americans went through during the Black Codes and Jim Crow, because the IDF learned from the United States. So we understand that this is completely interconnected, which is why I see what happened in the UK and Germany. They already lost. They're screwed. You think they don't want to implement that in the United States? That's the question I asked rhetorically earlier, Chris. You think that they don't want to implement that, as if they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna have our hands off the United States. We're not gonna mess with their free speech. It's only Europe. No, they are more happy to turn this to a fascist state too, and they will. And what do you think Doug Emhoff is here to do? Why do you guys think I'm covering this? Because this is Doug Emhoff on national TV saying the quiet part out loud. Kamala 2028. This is what we're gonna do.
Yep. Yeah. Without any fear, without any recourse, just throwing it out there. And the scary part is they will have the support, the bipartisan support to push it through.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the scary part.
Yep. They both compete with each other and call each other anti-Semitic. Like Gavin Newsom ran an ad like, I'm the one who actually stand up to anti-Semitism. I passed a law. I passed an anti-Semitism law in California. Donald Trump, he don't really stand with Israel. I do. I will actually crack down on censorship. Then Republicans, well, they will reply, no, Gavin Newsom full of shit. No, we promise we will censor Americans more. Like that's what they competed for. I want to get to the point where he's asked a follow-up question about whether criticisms of Israel-Palestine is similar to anti-Semitism. And I want you guys to see this weasel answer. I'm sorry I'm going a little bit longer this segment, but I think this is very important to cover in the eve of our European counterparts in Australia completely falling to fascism. And it clearly happening here. It clearly happening. The Trump administration is escalating in on steroids, but I covered it even under the Biden administration when Doug Emhoff was doing this as second gentleman. So we're almost done. I'll play a few more clips and then we move on. We're still going to cover Venezuela. Just let me know how you're doing on time, Chris. We got a lot to cover, but let's continue.
Tackling the scourge of misinformation and disinformation online, which includes Section 230 reform.
This is another reason why this is important to cover, because this is how they're going to use, and they've already done, the internet already cooked, by the way, but this is how they use the Zionists take over the internet, essentially, to justify the take over TikTok and many other things. That's what he's talking about, but let me continue.
Which allows these platforms to spew this hatred. We need more education on what anti-Semitism is, what the Holocaust is, real education, and finally,
we
Gene,
already
you and I
got
have talked about
thousands
this.
of
We all
Hollywood
need to
movies
come together. Anti-Semitism, hate is a poison.
What was that, Chris?
I said, what kind of education is he looking for? I was a U.S. history teacher. We already give education. We talk about the Holocaust. People reading Anne Frank. People are reading Man's Search for. People are reading all this stuff. There's a lot of stuff that's happening. I have no idea what he's saying. Every history book, the problem is the real historical revisionism has nothing to do with the Holocaust. It has to do with the Soviet and Chinese victory. They're the ones who helped win the war. That's omitted from the books, not the Holocaust. The Holocaust is a huge section of the book, especially modern American history or modern world history. But they all conveniently leave out the Soviet and Chinese experience of the war, or only give it a paragraph or two. And that's the real issue here. This guy, I have never seen any issue with any menorah, anything at a school, or talking about Jewish holidays or kids celebrating them, anything like that. I have no, and of course, everybody read about what was the Holocaust. We watched some documentaries. Everybody had a general idea. What is he talking about?
How dare you, Chris? Don't you know you committed an anti-Semitic trope? Like, I remember I heard one of these ADL guys that was like, whenever people bring up the death that Chinese and the Soviet Union suffered in World War II, that is a way to downplay and distract from the suffering of the Jewish people, who was the primary target of World War II. They literally say it's anti-Semitic to bring that up, the fact that people in China also suffer. I thought they suffered way worse. They had like 30 million dead. Soviet Union's tens of million dead. So your guys' hella inflated number, I take it, to say 6 million, 7 million. Still haven't suffered. You guys didn't. It wasn't like China. But if you just say that, you're like, bro, you committed the greatest anti-Semitic sin. But as you guys see, I'm not buying this bullshit no more because it's dangerous. I think the left is flirting with disaster. Legitimize. They are legitimate. Like people on live like, Nick, come on, man, you can't say that. Fuck out of here. Do you guys see what they're doing? I am not playing around with this for one damn second. They like, don't you know there actually is there are people who are critical of Israel and actions of synagogues who fund genocide. The actions, the same way I was critical of the Catholic Church and they was grooming children during the pedophile scandal. I don't view it any different. And the idea that people do is long time Zionist brainwashing. You can criticize the Catholic Church for the pedophile scandal, but you can't criticize the 99% of synagogues who fund genocide and sell off Palestinian land without being called. That's absurd. But anyway,
spot on.
Yeah, let's continue. I want to get to the part where you asked about. I think this it has to be I think this might be it. Let's continue.
Coursing through the veins of our democracy, it affects all of us, and all of us need to come together as a community, as a coalition, and be there for each other and fight it together. We can't be separated like this.
Mr. Second Gentleman, the anti-Semitism, as we all at this table, and you well know, is something that has plagued the planet for millennia. And
they got the two gay black dudes to tell you, like, guys, anti-Semitism, this is the worst thing ever. Come on, man. Why would you guys talk to the black community like this?
Why does it persist? We have had, you as Second Gentleman made this a priority. Other leaders before you have made it a priority to push back against anti-Semitism, to speak out about it, to be leaders on it, and yet it still persists. Why?
Well, that is an eternal question, unfortunately, Jonathan.
Oh, no one knows.
And these tropes are thousands of years old. It's called the oldest hate. And you see what's being spewed by prominent podcasters and people with millions of followers utilizing the most.
Swipe at Tucker and Candace.
Yeah, Chris, he talking about Tucker, Candace. He talking about literally all of us who call out Israeli war crimes.
Yep.
We call out the fact that you guys are murdering children.
Yeah,
he knows how he like. Well, these people are just using anti-Semitic tropes. That is, you're purposely lying about what we're saying about what your synagogues and what you guys are supporting.
Yeah, it's true.
Followers utilizing the most base, tropes of elitism and global control, and these things are just complete.
Look, he said it's a trope when you talk about their global control. Bro, you were just talking about how you use your government position to meet with global Jewish leaders. The ADL guy, he admitted how, we got brainstorming sessions with Jewish free market leaders all around the world where we come together and we brainstorm how to crack down and create punishment for people who's like, how is it anti-Semitic trope if we bring up what you just bragged about? Right? But anyway, let's continue.
So crazy.
Frankly, but it's unfettered. And again, without the education and with the proliferation online, without Section 230 reform, so many people are just getting this information and taking it as true. And then you have other leaders in that space who just kind of platform it and give a little wink, wink, nod to it, rather than doing what needs to be done, which is calling it out. And I was actually, I don't agree with Ben Shapiro on a lot of things, but I was very glad to see him calling it out. More people need to do that.
Bro, he praised Ben Shapiro, who is easily as bad as Nick Fuentes.
He's at the bottom of the barrel. He's at the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah. Ben Shapiro is an extreme anti-Arab bigot.
Yeah.
He said a vile thing about Arab people, how Arab people deserve to be bombed because they live in sewers. Remember that tweet? Like, the Jewish people, we build while they live in sewers, so they deserve to be bombed. Like that, if you look at like Ben Shapiro tweets from like the early 2010s, like when he was a young, super radical Jew, before he kind of like cleaned up as a businessman, this man had the most crazy Klan like tweets when it came to Palestinians. Like, bro, the shit he said about Arabs will make fucking a Klansman blush. Meanwhile, look at how Doug Emhoff quotes this racist, and I'm not even talking about like his feelings about black people and everyone else. His just anti-Arab hatred is oozing from him. But Doug Emhoff quotes him as an example of someone who's outstanding and who is calling out hatred. Do you guys see the game they're playing with you? He damn near trolling you to your face.
It's horrible. They're doing it. They're doing it with no shame. Not even like in the old days. You remember they used to conceal things, kind of hide them. Oh no. They're just doing it in the open now. They don't give a fuck at this point. That's the problem.
That's crazy, man. We almost done.
And, Mr. Emhoff, I want to ask you about anti-Israel rhetoric that we have seen.
This is the part I wanted to show.
A large increase of. since the October 7th attacks, and whether or not you think it contributes to anti-Semitism. Zoran.
So after those fucking ding-dongs, pretty much the question they asked had no substance to it. It was just fluff. So she's like, all right, let me actually ask a real question. Is criticizing Israel anti-Semitism? Listen to what he has to say.
7th attacks, and whether or not you think it contributes to anti-Semitism. Zoran Mamdani is perhaps the most high-profile elected official who has steadfastly refused to recognize Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. Do you believe that?
Look at the Jewish supremacist here. This is how she got the job. She implies that if you don't support Israel's right to exist as an ethno-state, she implies it.
Yeah,
that you're anti-Semitic. That's crazy.
That's right.
The question itself is crazy. She's like, well, people accuse Zoran Mamdani being anti-Semitic for not accepting a Jewish state. How are those two things connected? That's crazy.
It is crazy. It is crazy. I think this is indicative of not only their reach, but also their power centers. And I think that once you understand, who stands to benefit and gain from all of this, you have I think a much better idea and a much richer sort of perspective on what's going on. And it doesn't have to be even the tropes, because the tropes are there as they are, but this is the reality that you're looking at right here. This is not fake. This is not AI, is it? This is real. This is a real exchange, right? And I think that people, when they understand that, they recognize, whoa, what's going on here? And that's what you want. That's the kind of reaction that I want to see from people. Like, why is he, what's he up to? What's going on, right? And remember, at this point, because people were saying we were anti-Semitic for saying it. You remember we were anti-Semitic, 2-3 years ago for saying that Donald Trump is basically a Jew. And now, just over the past few days, they're joking about it. And then we crack, he's like a Jew. Thank you very much. I said it myself. It's like, what? What's going on?
Can this guy was so close to being first gentleman, Chris. Can you guys imagine? So people was like, I can't believe Kamala Harris actually didn't support a ceasefire and God didn't call for an arms embargo. And if she did, she would have won. Why did she do that? The exit polling showed that she would have won if she did that.
Yep.
Damn, I was like, it's obvious why she's not. She has an AIPAC handler husband who is telling her what position to take on Israel. Do you guys think that Kamala is some sort of deep thinker about the Middle East, understands the history, the conflicts? No, you think she's like, I got my own theories on how to handle. No. This man right here will be shaping Middle Eastern policy if Kamala Harris was ever elected. So let's continue. This is the last part of that I want to show you guys when he's finally actually asked a decent question, even though she framed it in an extremely Jewish supremacist way. She's like, do you think that Israel's actions have to do anything with this? Which is obviously it is. So let me show you his response.
A belief like this and the spread of this belief invites or cultivates anti-Semitism and increases the risk of potential threats against the Jewish people?
Look, we need to level set on these issues. Valid criticism of the Israeli government is protected, just like we and I personally can criticize the United States government. People can criticize the policies of the Israeli government. But when that criticism pushes into calling for the destruction of Israel, the murder of people, the dehumanization of people, that crosses a line.
Does it though? Because he said essentially anyone who supports Palestinian resistance, that's what he views as a red line. We're just calling for supporting international law.
Correct.
And that's what they want to make illegal, right? Any final thoughts on this, Chris? Now I want to get to our Venezuela story. We'll cover the oil tanker next. But any final thoughts?
My final thoughts is that we all have to be vigilant to protect our civil rights and civil liberties. Once they're gone, they're very hard to get back. So people need to be out there. People need to be aware of this stuff. Anybody who's watching this stream now, talk to people and make sure you're saying, look, if you really value these freedoms, if you really value, for example, in the US, these amendments, get out there and start defending it. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, very well. So I want to get to the piracy that the Trump administration, and this is why Donald Trump is just engaging outright piracy. It kills two birds with one stone. Yep. This highly illegal action. I want to get your thoughts on this, Chris. On Trump's recent actions in Venezuela. I know you had interviewed, you talked to Nicolas Maduro before.
Yep.
You've been on the ground in Venezuela. I want to get your thoughts on Donald Trump's latest actions, because people claim that Donald Trump was going to declare war. People like, is Donald Trump going to declare war? He already has. Like, he already is engaging in acts of war, and these kind of blockades is an outright act of war. So here's the headline: U.S. oil blockade of Venezuela pushes Cuba towards collapse. The communist-ruled island was already suffering from food shortages, blackouts, and exodus of people. Now it faces the loss of cheap oil from Nicolas Maduro. So, Chris, I want to get your thoughts on this blockade that Donald Trump announced in Venezuela.
Well, first of all, I just want to say that, I'll go to the second part first. I was in Cuba earlier this year, and certainly Cuba is going through a very difficult time. And I think that the Trump administration in its first term has eyed what John Bolton called the troika of tyranny: Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua. And when you understand that, you know that because of Cuba and Venezuela's links built by Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro, Venezuela provided a lot of petroleum products to Cuba, which is, of course, still under basically a blockade and under enormous sanctions, right? So what I want to say is that this is a blatant example of piracy in the 21st century. This is a blatant example of how the United States violates the sovereignty, territorial integrity of other countries. And this is a profound gift to those who seek to expand U.S. imperial interests and Zionist interests by extension into Latin America.
And what makes me sick is because we see how this is, and I was playing this on Twitter earlier, this is the uniparty's war. Like, don't get twisted. Even though Donald Trump is the one engaging in it and he's the one violating international law, he deserves all the heat. The Democratic Party, like, you can tell with Hakeem Jeffries supporting the military budget. Mm-hmm. And now the Democratic Party and their media heads are defending this insanely illegal action. So I'll play a little bit of the clip. I will get your thoughts, and then we'll get you out here very soon. But I want to show just a little bit of this, because this is MSNBC, the quote, the Trump resistance media, who is legitimizing Trump's legal claim when there isn't any. Let's watch this insane neocon propaganda, and I'll show you guys just a small example of this, because this kind of propaganda was playing nonstop. Every single segment where they talk about this on MSNBC and CNN, they went to defend the Trump administration. They may have criticism of his strategy, but just listen to how they sell the propaganda.
Now, former director for Syria and Lebanon at the White House National Security Council during the Obama administration, Hagar Chamali, and MS Now military analyst, retired 4-star General Barry McCaffrey. Hagar, what more do we know about these vessels that the U.S. is now targeting?
Sure. Well, so we know that the vessel, as you mentioned, is under sanctions, U.S. sanctions, which is really important. We also know that the U.S. government has a warrant for its seizure, a warrant that they got in the United States, obviously. And we know that the vessel wasn't flagged. And so when it doesn't have a flag, it violates laws, international law in international waters, which also gives the U.S. a legal argument to board or seize the vessel.
There's no... The United States sanctions on Venezuela are illegal. What she said there is complete and utter bullshit. You guys see how she said, she didn't say that the United States have a claim. She said that the United States have a legal argument. No, they do not. United States sanctions have to be approved by the UN Security Council.
That's
and
right.
The UN already ruled that United States sanctions on Venezuela are illegal. But you guys see what they said? I'll play this last clip and I'll get you in there, Chris.
General, I've got to ask you, this has been going on for several days now. How common is it to see the U.S. Coast Guard pursuing an oil vessel, and why hasn't it come to a close at this point? How complicated is it to flag that down?
Well, it certainly underscores the challenge of a, quote, blockade, which, of course, legally does not exist. Venezuela has 1,700 miles of coastline. Compare that to the west coast of the United States with 1,300 miles. So this is a huge challenge. It's also a challenge in that if the ship's captain defies the Coast Guard, which he has, then we have an option of boarding using hostile intent. But having a gunfight on an oil tanker is not a good thing. So I think the Coast Guard wisely is shadowing it. But look, there's 100 some odd sanctioned ships out there. There's a patchwork of legality to what the Trump administration is doing. And we're on the verge, it appears, of using U.S. naval and air power against Venezuela itself. So it's a very difficult situation. Maduro is not in threat internally. He's maintained by Cuban intelligence and loyalty from the armed forces. He's going nowhere, and the country is economically devastated by these sanctions.
And
Chris, I want to give you a spot. I want to show you guys this because you guys see how they talking like the United States sanctions are legitimate. Look at this. Although claims in corporate media that Venezuelan oil is subject to international sanctions, nothing can be further from the truth. When a country takes it upon itself to impose sanctions without Security Council approval, they are called unilateral coercive measures. Yeah, which violate the UN Charter. So the sanctions on Venezuela are illegal. But Chris, any response you have?
No, absolutely. These are unilateral coercive measures. We've known that all along, and we've been saying that. I've been saying it, since I'm, blue in the face. The fact is that the sanctions imposed violate all international law rules, norms, standards, everything we have basically on the books, and also precedent. And basically now what you're seeing is the strangling of a very powerful country. The question that we have to think about is if war breaks out, what does it look like? But before we get even to the war, the fact that these sanctions are biting at the people, this is already an act of war in a way. Everybody's got to understand a blockade is an act of aggression. It's an act of war. You can then defend yourself, and there starts the whole cycle of violence. So I don't believe these people who say we're not about violence, we're just protecting, somehow they have to build a monument. I don't know. It's like crazy what's going on out there. The fact that they're saying we have drugs coming in the country when Venezuela is not even a major producer, not even a minor producer of the drugs. And the biggest drug cartel, as you know, and everybody knows, is the CIA and the DEA. Let's be honest. And those who've reported on that, some have died through supposedly natural causes or accidents, but we know other than that. And then you have this hybrid war on the ground with an opposition. And you and I both agree on this. Venezuela's been too kind to their opposition. Yeah. Like, I would have gone full Dzerzhinsky, like, Cheka, like everybody's, go move this mountain over there to that side, something along those lines. I would not have given this kind of free reign. Now, of course, they're dealing with the repercussions of that kind of free reign. But ultimately, I think that part of what they're trying to do now is they're trying to starve Venezuela's resources, opportunities, and to basically also conduct psychological warfare. Because if every couple of days you're saying, oh my God, war is imminent. Oh my God, Trump has a speech. Oh my God, this, people get fatigued to the point where some part of the population eventually is just going to say, oh, well, fuck it. Whoever comes, we're happy. Just let's get back life to normal, right? That's something that's happening as well. So I think this is both the economic dimension, the political dimension, the military direction, and also you have this psychological war that's behind the scenes. You have an information war, you have an actual possible war, and then you have a psychological war. all of that has to be understood in the context of Venezuela, I think, to properly understand the situation.
Yeah, what does it say that Donald Trump just says the quiet part out loud that Venezuela stole the oil that they stole the United States oil, just saying the imperialist mindset, the pretty much repeating the Monroe Doctrine that everything that's in this hemisphere is ours. So at first you guys say it was about stopping drugs, and then once you guys realized that wasn't working on public sentiment, which was very tricky. It was a tricky because it was a tricky maneuver because they saw that in polling that the American people was worried about fentanyl. So they thought that because the American people was concerned about fentanyl tracking, they're like, all right, let's just tie Nicolas Maduro with fentanyl. But American people are like, bro, we're not that dumb. So now they changed the strategy. Like, oh, well, actually, they stole our oil. And now they're just saying the quiet part out loud. They're pretty much panicking. And now they're just outright relying on piracy and destroying international law. So, Chris, I want to get your thoughts on how you think this is going to end, man, because you got Venezuela who put a complaint to the UN Security Council, which, once again, I cannot emphasize enough, the actions that the Trump administration is doing is highly illegal. Like, there's headlines from that I saw from the Atlantic that said Nicolas Maduro, that Donald Trump found Nicolas Maduro's kryptonite. All you had to do is steal all the oil coming from Venezuela. No shit. Like, dipshit. Like, if anyone does anything that's crazy, you can bring a state to its knees. But there are geopolitical ramifications for this. Like, the oil market is tanking because of this. You have a lot of uncertainty because of this. You have Cuba that facing consequences because of this. So, Chris, I want to get your final thoughts on this blatant invasion and Marco Rubio and Donald Trump. I don't think they have an end game. Do you?
No, they do not have an end game. Their end game has, first of all, war is a racket, as you know, Smedley Butler said, right? I think that this is a great business for them ultimately. And in the grand scheme of things, the fact that everything has become business oriented, the negotiations in Gaza, the negotiations Russia, Ukraine, and now on here, there is a lot of money. And that's why you had Machado basically saying, look, just come and take everything. I mean, you got to imagine if you're the US president and you're a businessman, you're surrounded by a bunch of, sycophants who are also businessmen, but they also want to be in with you. And you have a leader, supposedly, a fake leader, backed by CIA, in the country basically saying, look, if you make me president, I'll give you everything. That's a problem. That's a serious problem. So you asked, and I think a very good question, how does this end? Or what's sort of the end goal? What comes next? I don't know, to be honest with you. I honestly feel that we are in a very delicate situation. These next few days, few weeks are really important. I think the Trump administration doesn't have the backing that they need to launch this kind of operation. It doesn't mean they won't do it. I think it'll absolutely destroy Trump's power going into the midterms. And I think that his MAGA base is going to fracture in enormous ways. And you've already seen Marjorie Taylor Greene posting today, regardless of what you think of her. She posted and basically said, wait a second, why are we going after Venezuela? These kinds of things, I think, have an important impact. But ultimately, if the U.S. attacks, like I've said before, I think it's going to be decapitation strikes. I think they're going to target supposedly narco-terrorist bases in the jungle. And then they're going to target government buildings to try to bring down the government of Maduro and possibly try to assassinate him and other people. And then bring in some sort of, fifth column army that's going to try to restore order. I don't think they'll be successful. And I think that it's going to be, more than an outside war, this is going to be a civil war scenario that people have to be prepared for. Because there's going to be a lot of loyal Chavistas saying, whoa, we're not going back to those days. And a lot of people who are like, we've lived too long under this siege and blockade, we're ready to change it. I honestly would say that I think the military on the local military, the militia, the armed forces of Venezuela are going to crush all opposition, number one. And number two, I think they're going to defend the country very, very well. No doubt about it. And I know them. I've seen them. I was with General Pedrino. I think that this is going to be an epic defense of their country.
Oh man, Chris, I was super jealous because you were put on the Ukrainian kill list.
Yeah, I'm on there.
I like, it should have been me, man. I've been working trying to piss these people off. But you guys know Chris put in working when the Ukrainian fascist government trying to kill him. You guys saw that they killed a Russian general, and I'm gonna cover that later. I had that in our notes for later, but I'll probably cover that in the next few shows or so. But I appreciate you for joining us. Chris does amazing work with DDG. I was talking to Midwestern Mars. You guys know I like talking to a lot of ACP homies, so it's always great having you on, man. I appreciate you taking time tonight.
Thank you so much for having me on. Wishing everybody, happy holidays, whatever you're celebrating, and happy New Year. And I hope to see you in the new year.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I appreciate you joining us tonight.
Thank you so much.
I'm gonna cover this more in detail here soon, but actually, wonder if I can find an article. I'm gonna see if I can find an article of it because they killed Ukraine assassinate general. Here it is. Look, Ukraine. Here's some Ukrainian terrorism that they engage in as Donald Trump is advocating for peace. Like here it is. Russian general killed by Moscow car bomb. Sound like some Ukrainian terrorism to me. Obviously designed to kill any sort of peace talks. Man, we got the West and Europe pledging never-ending war against Russia, using Ukraine as a front. They have the war in Venezuela to reestablish dominance and the Monroe Doctrine. You have Israel that's openly, like not even hiding the fact that they're implementing the Greater Israel Project, bombing all of its neighbors, bombing Lebanon, stealing land from Syria, seizing the West Bank, seizing Gaza. And then you have the West, they have their eyes on Taiwan for the next few years or so. The West, man, we're witnessing an offensive from the genocidal West. And next year is going to be crazy. We're going to see all these storylines come to head. Who knows what's going to happen? But we see the genocidal ruling class in the West in rebellion against international law. And we need an anti-war movement. We need a true anti-fascist, anti-Zionist movement. We need it yesterday. And that cannot happen within the Democratic and Republican Party. We got to build dual power structures. We got to build our own parties. That's why I like talking to Chris and the ACP people. They have their own party. Like if you don't want to be part of their party, that's fine. Build your party. I'm building coalition with Shama, work straight back. I work with the radical elements in the Green Party. I talk to my friends at ACP. I'm trying to build something. I want you guys to build something with me. I want you guys to get in the game because things are getting crazy. This was a pretty wild year, but I think the next 2 years, especially like next year, is going to be crazy with the Navy 2027 plan with Taiwan and China coming up. Further escalation in the Middle East. Things are going to get rough, and we need to start organizing and come together as a community to prepare ourselves for that. So appreciate you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoy your holidays. This is the last Nick at Prime Time for the holidays. I don't think I'll be able to go live at Christmas Eve. So we see. I think this will be the last stream this week, I think. So I appreciate you guys for watching. I want you guys to enjoy your holidays. We have a lot of great plans coming up for next year. A lot of collaborations with my friend Jamal Thomas. I think me and Jamal, we're going to do a new show on Sunday. Like a Sunday show he's working on. There's a lot going on in RBN for next year, so enjoy your holidays. I'll be back in the next week or so. Take care, my friends.